Hi guys, I welcome you all to the next lecture in our anthropology series. So we are doing this genetic 9.4. I know 9.4 is a quite long topic and I'm trying to cover each topic per day. So I'm not trying to take more topics a day because I want you to understand each and every bit of it, because questions can come. जैसे कि genetic imprinting we did yesterday, it can come in a 10 marker, it can come in a 15 marker also. Similarly, genetic counseling pe bhi there could be questions, right? So that is why I am covering, but today we are going to cover genetic counseling also and genetic screening also. So we are going to do two topics, okay? And before we start with our today's lecture, I have an announcement, or rather I would say a request to make. Guys, this platform, this YouTube channel that I've started, this is not just a channel for disseminating information. This is a channel where I want to make it a community, and you are my family and we all are aspirants. We all are trying to help each other in this journey. So please make it interactive. Please guys, you have to subscribe to the channel, you have to share the channel with other fellow aspirants, because we are going to soon start with general studies, current affairs, all of that. But for that even we need certain motivation, right? So for that, and you should make the whole thing communicative, because all of you are fellow aspirants and you should communicate with each other. We all are students of anthropology. We all need to share what we know and make it a more interactive, communicative platform, right? So it's not a one way communication that's happening. You have to make it a community. We want to make it a community. So guys, just try that, you communicate with others and we become a big family. We try and achieve good for all, right? So with this, let's get started with this. So today we are going to start with genetic counseling. There's a picture that I've put. I'll bring you back to this picture. Basically, you can see in this picture, we have discussed it many a times. Carrier parents are heterozygous to a disease, right? That means for example, if this is a sickle cell disease, so they will have a one normal trait for that and one sickle cell. Okay? So if both are carriers for a disease, there are chances that 25% of their children would be unaffected, 50% would be carriers like the parents, and 25% of them would be affected. Now you will say, why are we studying this again and again? So you will understand it when we start with genetic counseling. So the word is made up of two words, genetic and counseling. That means hum genetics ki baat to kare. We are talking about the genome, we are talking about the genes, the encoded information in that, and how it is inherited from parents to the offsprings. This is the whole concept of genetics. Then counseling क्या होता है? To make somebody aware, to understand, right? That is what it is. So genetic counseling is the process of investigating individuals and families affected by or at risk of a genetic disorder to help them understand and adapt to the medical, psychological, familial implications of a genetic contribution to a disease. Now I'm sure you did not understand this. Now just try and understand this. What am I saying? I am saying, see, first of all, in genetic counseling, just remember that we are only talking about the genetic disorders. That means things that are passed on from children, parents to children. For example, if there is a mutation that occurs anywhere between the reproductory phase, or there is some other chance factor that happens or accidental thing that happens which causes a certain disease in the progeny, we are not talking about that. Okay? We are only talking about the things that we inherit as part of our genes. Okay? So in genetic counseling, we are restricting ourselves to genetic disorders. That means any disease that we might take from our parents. Okay? So we are talking about genetic disorders, and in genetic counseling what we do is that, if anybody has a family history, right? For example, many people, for example, if any family has a history of mental patients, that means some person is having depression or schizophrenia or anything like that, less IQ children, okay? So what we'll do is we are going to study, and how we are going to study, many times it is done through pedigree analysis, right? That this person had this problem, okay? For example, we are studying schizophrenia in a family, ठीक है? So we'll see, we'll draw a chart, ठीक है ना, कि this person had schizophrenia, ठीक है? This person did not have. अब now schizophrenia ये तो complex characters हो गए, तो you can't look at them very easily because they are not like, even though they run in the family, but they are complex traits. Let us take a very simple trait, for example, hemophilia, okay? Or let us take sickle cell anemia only. Now what will happen? It is very easy. Let's make the pedigree chart. I will draw healthy individuals with white, yellow carriers and affected red, okay? So if this is parent 1 and this is parent number 2, that means this parent is a carrier, yellow means carrier and triangle means a mother, okay? Okay, so they have children. Now they have children, they have like 3 children, and let us suppose one of them is a affected child, one of them is a carrier child like the mother, and one is unaffected. Let's draw one unaffected also, okay? So one unaffected is there, one affected and one carrier child, okay? So now what if this person has a partner, or let us take this person marries a individual who is a carrier again, or maybe it will same ऐसा ही हो जाएगा. Let us take this person who has a बिल्कुल normal person, ठीक है? Then what will happen to their children? Because he has both HH, ठीक है, and it's a fatal disease, but this person is healthy, ठीक है? तो all the childrens would be carriers, right? So जितने मर्जी बच्चे होंगे इनके, they will all be carriers, ठीक है ना? So this is the probability whether you are a carrier, ठीक है, you are unaffected or you are affected by a disease, ठीक है? And what sort of a partner you are mating with, ठीक है? That depends what kind of progeny next that you are going to have. So this genetic counseling is very important because this person, he might die, ठीक है ना, obviously. So all his children would be carriers, right? And if a person who already has the disease and he marries a person who is also affected, all the children will have the disease and they might not be able to reproduce in many cases, right? Because diseases that are very fatal in that case, so you can't even reach that age of reproduction also, right? So genetic counseling is done to reduce the genetic load. Now what is genetic load? We had studied in the previous topic, previous chapter. Genetic load is, you can say, the burden of dangerous or deleterious genes that are present in a population. For example, एक population है, वहाँ पे there is hemophilia amongst certain people. So hemophilia क्या करेगा? It will reduce your immunity, right? So hemophilia, in if there are 100 individuals and there are 10 people with hemophilia, so what is that? That is the genetic load, right? So what is this genetic counseling? Why are we doing? We are doing it so that we can understand the prospects, that what if this person marries this person and has a child, what is the child going to be affected by certain diseases? Is the child going to have any problems in the future, or is there any fatal disease तो नहीं हो जाएगा बच्चे को? So for all these things we try to study and we try to do genetic counseling before the person एक तो there are times that you can have the genetic counseling. First, before conceiving, that means before having a child, some people do genetic counseling at that time. and that is the best way to do it, because if you have a child and then uske baad to there is only a cure that can take place na. But in genetic counseling, when you are doing it before having a child, you can prevent any sort of a disease, right? Because for example, you are a person who has you are a carrier, okay, and you mate with a person who is affected, so definitely your children are going to have that risk, right? So genetic counseling, when you are doing, even that matters. And why we are doing because if we have a next generation, what kind of a risk they are facing, okay, what kind of genetic disorders they can inherit, okay, and then what effect it is going to have on the in medical sense, psychological sense, because obviously if a disease is there, it's not only physical, it's mental also, okay na, how much stress it can give you, okay na. So it's better to, कहते ना, prevention is better than cure. So if you can prevent something from happening, this is that prevention that we are talking about. So अब क्या होता है, in genetic counseling we try to interpret, ठीक है, interpretation of family and medical histories to assess the chance of disease occurrence or recurrence, ठीक है. So what we are trying to study, maybe through pedigree analysis, taking taking out discussions with the family, ठीक है, knowing about who all were the people who had a certain disease in the family, for example hemophilia, ठीक है, who all had it, ठीक है. So we are trying to assess how many people, analyze कर रहे हैं based on the information that we have, okay. So उसके basis पे genetic counseling is done. So it is educating the people about the inheritance of a disease, ठीक है, how if you have a disease, how you should test it, ठीक है, how you can manage it, how you can prevent it from happening, ठीक है ना. Because if two people are there, they are consulting a genetic counselor, ठीक है, he is telling you that this are the risk. For example, let's look at this picture again. 25% chances है you have unaffected children, but there are chances that 50% carrier होंगे and 25% unaffected होंगे. So they can take out certain measures to correct what is happening also, ठीक है. So this is genetic counseling. So it is done to promote informed choices, ठीक है, adaptation to the risk or condition, and support in reaching out to the relatives that are also at risk. For example, you draw a pedigree analysis and you see that there is a couple in your family who have not yet they don't have a child yet, but they are at a risk, so you inform them also. So इससे क्या होता है, you are trying to basically reduce the genetic load, ठीक है, genetic load you are trying to reduce, and you are trying to minimize the risk of genetic disorders also in the family, in your own, ठीक है, उसमें. So basically this concept is also very closely linked to a concept of eugenics, ठीक है. Eugenics, euthenics, ये this is the topic in further chapters, but I'll just give you a brief idea of what eugenics are. So basically this practice of advising people about inherited traits began around the 20th century, because genetics started with Gregor Mendel, ठीक है, but he did not know what genes are, but he had a certain idea that कुछ factor plays a part, and there is certain inheritance that happens in the Mendelian laws that he gave, ठीक है. So after that there the genetics, the study of genetics began to grow, and then they understood, okay, certain diseases are also passed on from generation to generation in that way only, ठीक है. So this practice started around 20th century to study how genetic disorders are passed on from family, ठीक है, heredity, through heredity. So heredity became intertwined with social reforms. So उस time पे क्या हुआ, because you know that this was the time when we were also seeing the rise of European powers, ठीक है, like that. So what they were doing, for example in Germany, ठीक है, there was mass extermination of Jews. Why? They believed that they were not superior. So in that, so they joined the concepts of race with biology, right? So इस चक्कर में क्या हुआ, they were very, you can say eugenics, it went on to take a very negative role. ठीक है, many places there were prosecutions that happened like that. So many states, even in the United States, have laws mandating the sterilization of certain individuals. क्यों? Why do you sterilize certain individuals? Very simple. The concept is very simple. For example, there are people, ठीक है, who have you can say they have hemophilia. ठीक है, so people who are living in European places and they are quite susceptible to diseases like hemophilia. So जैसे for example अफ्रीका में malaria prevalence is more because it's a tropical place where vectors are easily, you know, it's a good place for them to reproduce successfully. So their malaria prevalence is there. So there is a heterozygous advantage of sickle cell anemia. We have talked about this again and again. Similarly, in the European nations around Mediterranean mostly, hemophilia काफ़ी ज़्यादा, there is a lot of prevalence of hemophilia. So some diseases have a role to play, मतलब and environment also has a effect on the diseases. ठीक है, so जैसे tropical countries में vector borne diseases are more. ठीक है, similarly like that. So hemophilia के केस में क्या होता है, many times they would be stopped from having a child. Because why? Because if they'll have a child again, either that child would be carrier for a disease or a affected child. So that will increase the genetic load of that population, and nobody wants it. Everybody wants that the population should be healthy, right? Nobody wants कि deleterious genes should increase in a population, right? So to curtail the deleterious genes or certain that kind of genetic load, often they are forced to sterilize. That means they are often not allowed to have children, and that is a very ethical concern, right? This is a very ethical issue. You can't stop somebody from reproducing just because, you know, they are suffering from a disease. They are taking away their right also. But then the pros and cons of both of things. So this all is a part of eugenics. ठीक है, so eugenics is not the topic for now, but just understand genetic counseling क्यों करते हैं. Because you sometimes, for example, you know that if you are going to reproduce, your child would definitely have this disease. So then why do you want to have a child who will suffer? You might want to abort that child, na? So because उससे क्या होगा, you are trying to you know, save a person's life from that drudgery also. So these are the certain issues for which people go for genetic counseling. ठीक है, so we have understood the concept. Now what aspects are covered during the genetic counseling? So what do? We talk, so there are psychological effects. That means for example, if you have this child, ठीक है, you will have to be there for that child 24/7, and it might have a mental effect on you. So these are also important concerns. Then you inform your relatives also. ठीक है, then genetic counseling also tells you the type and risk of inheritance. That means for example कि 25% chances हैं कि, you know, you will have a affected child, or 50% chances are that you will have a affected child. So what is this? This is the risk that you are taking, or what kind of a disease your child could have. ठीक है, so these are the aspects that we are covering. So we give them support and information. For example, okay, if you will have the child, you can do this, because these are doctors. Okay, they will also tell you how you can minimize the disease. For example, somebody is seeking genetic counseling not before conceiving but after conceiving, or maybe it's too late to abort a child, or somebody is taking it after the birth of the baby. Now what to do? Now you have to stop the further damage from happening, right? So that is also included in this. Okay, so these are the ideas that we are doing covering in the genetic counseling. Now okay, now one more thing. Why genetic counseling? Why do we need to do genetic counseling? We need to do genetic counseling in, वैसे तो always you should, being an informed citizen, you should do it, because then आपको there'll be, आपको थोड़ा idea रहेगा, you know, that if you are having a baby, what are the chances that there could be मतलब कोई प्रॉब्लम होने का चांस क्या है. बट there are certain cases when you should definitely go for genetic counseling. For example, if the mother's age is more than 35 years, because as we have talked that there are more chances, if the mother is a little old, there are more chances of children having certain diseases like that. Then ethnicity. For example, you are living at a certain place. For example, you are an African, you are living in those peripheral areas where there is more sickle cell anemia, ठीक है ना? So then you should go for the genetic counseling. So that could be one reason also. Then miscarriages or any infant deaths in your house. So you can understand why are these miscarriages happening in your family, right? Then you have already affected children in your family. For example, some you have you are trying to have the second child, but your first child has a disease. So what are the chances that your second child can have a disease, right? So you can go in that case also. Then there's a family history. For example, you know that your family has certain kind of a genetic disorder. In that case, you can go for genetic counseling, right? So these are certain reasons when you can go for genetic counseling, right? This we have done. So now okay, so इसमें genetic counseling में we do genetic screening. Okay, so what is पहले let me take you to that slide. Okay, so in genetic counseling we can start off with genetic screening. So you can say genetic screening is a part of genetic counseling, because in genetic counseling we are not only diagnosing that you know there could be a disease, we are managing it, ठीक है, we are trying to prevent it, ठीक है, we are trying to find ways of doing it. So it's a bigger concept. Genetic screening is just application of tests for early detection of a hereditary disease. So you can say इसमें we are trying to only diagnose. So it's a part of genetic counseling, ठीक है. So इसमें we try to analyze proteins, chromosomes, वही similar through amniosynthesis, chorionic villi sampling, all of that. उसी से हम try करेंगे ना. We'll take something जैसे I'll just show you this picture. ये देखो, जैसे this is the embryo, ठीक है. We are taking out certain cells, ठीक है. उसमें से we are trying to take out the genetic material and we are trying to see whether there are certain, by drawing certain karyotypes, ठीक है ना. Karyotyping करेंगे, then we look into some other things and try to see whether there are any genetic disorders, कोई numerical ना हो, कोई structural anomaly ना हो. We are trying to do that, ठीक है. Okay, so screening is only reliable and valid when you have the natural history of the disease also. So that means you have to understand. For example, there is a population at risk of a particular disorder. For example, if I go to a doctor, मैं बोलूँ मेरी genetic screening करो, for what? There should be certain idea in your mind also, na. For example, I am living in a area where people have thalassemia, right? So then क्या होगा, फिर मेरे को जाके उसके लिए I will have to get check, ठीक है. Guys, okay, sorry, I'm so sorry. I think मैंने हेमोफीलिया के लिए बोल दिया था कि यूरोपियन पॉपुलेशन में होता है नियर मेडिटेरेनियन. आई थिंक प्लीज़ उसको करेक्ट कर लेना. दैट वाज थैलेसीमिया, ठीक है. वो मैंने आई थिंक आई मेड अ मिस्टेक देयर. प्लीज़ करेक्ट दैट. आई जस्ट सेड इट राइट नाउ. सो बेसिकली क्या है, इफ़ यू आर लिविंग इन अ प्लेस एंड यू आर ससेप्टेबल टू अ डिजीज, देन यू कैन गो फॉर दैट. फिर उसके लिए स्क्रीनिंग करवा सकते हो, राइट. सो दीज आर सर्टन आइडियाज. और यू हैव अ फैमिली हिस्ट्री फॉर अ डिजीज, सो उसके लिए यू कैन गो फॉर अ जेनेटिक स्क्रीनिंग. सो यू हैव टू डू अ हिस्ट्री ऑफ द डिजीज ऑल्सो. यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड दैट आइडिया. सो देन heterozygous स्क्रीनिंग. Obviously, if you are a heterozygous for a disease, what are the chances? तो फिर you will go for a screening, right? So it helps make couple informed reproductive choices. We have talked about this. Now comes this. So you can also call it diagnostic testing, because you are doing individual is showing signs or symptoms associated with a specific condition. For example, you are either a carrier for a disease, ठीक है. So now you will go for genetic screening कि what happens if I have a child, ठीक है. So to arrive at definitive conclusion, ठीक है, of whether what is going to happen, you need to do your genetic screening. So it gives you better prognosis. That means it gives you a better idea or analysis of what medical condition you have or what your children can have, ठीक है. So genetic tests are available for a number of genetic conditions, which includes Down syndrome, sickle cell anemia, Tay-Sachs disease, muscular dystrophy. We have studied so many autosomal disorders, genetic disorders, जिसमें numerical वाले, structural वाले, for which we saw the karyotypes also. So all those diseases mostly you can do the genetic screening for. And establishing a genetic diagnosis can provide information to others at risk in your family. We have talked about this. Any reproductive risk can also be explored. That means if you are going to reproduce, so what risk your child will have, that also is covered. And many disorders cannot occur unless both the mother and father passes on their genes. So ये क्या हो गया, autosomal recessive. That means if you both are a carrier for a disease, that means you both are heterozygous for that disease. So what are the chances that your child will have that disease depends upon the severity of, and in that case we are talking about recessive gene, ठीक है ना, तो recessive है, तो 25% chances है that your child will be a homozygous for that, because अगर recessive allele होता है, you need to have it in the homozygous condition to be able to affect you. So these are also the things that we can study with genetic screening, right? Then presymptomatic genetic screening. Now what is presymptomatic genetic screening? For example, you have a family history. Now I can थोड़ा मुझे याद आ रहा है, थोड़े टाइम पहले एंजेलिना जोली, she went for a checkup for her chances of having a breast cancer, ठीक है. So what is that? She was having a family history of breast cancer, ठीक है. So she also went there to understand what are the chances of her developing certain kind of a disease like that. I'm not sure for कि if that was breast cancer, but you can just imagine, understand that you are pre-symptomatic. That means you are not having the disease as such, but you are going for the checkup because you think that, okay, this is a genetic disorder that runs in our family and I might have those genes, right? So that is pre-symptomatic genetic screening. So it is not only that you will reproduce only and then you will only go for the genetic screening. You can also have a disease, na, or you might be having certain recessive traits, and the disease might not be showcasing itself or expressing itself, but you might be a carrier for the disease and you do not even know, ठीक है ना. So it could be mild thing. So prenatal diagnosis होता है, that means if you are going for a idea that you have to have a family, तो उस case में you can have a diagnosis. So I think this is all that we have to do for today. We have understood what is the idea behind genetic counselling and genetic screening being a part of genetic counselling. Yes guys, so please, if you did like the lecture, please like, share and subscribe. Please interact with me, do share your ideas, do post your comments. I would be happy to interact with you, and you all should interact with each other and further your preparation with each other, right? So guys, please like, share and subscribe. Thank you so much.